Hello everyone, my name is Greg Jewell and I am the designer of Galdor's Grip. Galdor's Grip is a no table needed or in-hand solo fantasy card game that takes about 30 or 45 minutes to play. The core set that you see here is comprised of 18 cards, and there are several 6-card expansions available, all print and play and free on several platforms, including itch.io, Board Game Geek, PMP Arcade, etc. If you go to galdorsgrip.com, it will forward you to my itch.io page, and I'll also link that in the description below. Now, there's a couple other videos and review videos out there already for this game. Most of those cover version 4.3 or earlier. There are a couple notable changes in version 5.0 you see here. So I wanted to go over the game rules and an abbreviated playthrough using these new version 5.0 cards. So for those of you who haven't watched any of the previous videos or know nothing about this game, the premise of the game is there is this powerful wizard, Galdor. He's a guardian of the realm, and long ago he fought off an ancient evil known as Frenzied Flame. He was able to defeat that ancient evil, but remnants of it lay dormant within his mind for centuries. A Grand Telepath named Feragot, here's his fortress here, has invaded the Guardian's mind and is trying to release that ancient evil out into the world. It's a very chaotic evil. And so your job is to help Galdor lure Feragot into an illusory prison within Galdor's mind and then help him seal that prison. And so Galdor's Grip is kind of a play on how you are going to hold the deck of cards and that illusory prison that you're going to seal and trap Feragot in. Now, how the game plays mechanically is the object of the game is to score 9 points or channel 9 power, which is represented by the star symbol, in order to seal Feragot's prison. So you're going to try, there's all these cards have various scoring objectives on them, or some, depending on if you rotate them, that they offer some of that power or those points. And there's certain abilities and player actions that will allow you to manipulate the deck order and the orientation of the cards to move the cards into positions that complete those scoring objectives. And you need to score 9 power or points by the end of the game in order to win. Now, there's a couple ways that you can lose the game, and one of those is through these cards directly. They're kind of represented here, Feragot's forces in purple. The cards that you're going to that are going to help you win the game, in addition to needing 9 points, are these kind of cards in the yellow here, these binding stones, and then of course Galdor's Grip. You've got the Frenzied Flame, which is kind of this RNG aspect that disrupts your deck in the game, and then there's these other cards here that are manifestations within Galdor's mind, and we'll go over each one in detail very shortly. But yeah, so the deck's going to start face down. All 18 cards start face down. You're going to shuffle the deck to start, and then you're going to take turns interacting with the top card of the deck, flipping it over, and then moving a certain number of cards to the bottom of the deck. And as you cycle through that deck more and more cards are going to be revealed that offer more scoring opportunities, but also more dangers to make you lose the game. And so your goal is to complete enough of those scoring objectives to win the game by the time you activate the Galdor's Grip rotated ability. All right, so now let's move on to the actual card anatomy to get a better understanding of what's represented on the cards here. So first thing to note is every card has 2 orientations. So you've got the upright and then upside down orientation. The active side will always be the current left side of the card. So that'd be here. So it would be this value, if there's any symbols here, and this ability on this side. And then when we flip it here, it would be this symbol right here, the power, and this ability. Sometimes these abilities are different, and sometimes, and usually they're the same on both sides, but that's something to take note. Okay, so now the name and these deck construction attributes that you see up here, those are always active or can always be referenced no matter what orientation the card is. So the values, any symbols and abilities are only active, but the name and the deck construction attributes, those are always considered active or always part of the card. So it doesn't matter what orientation the card is. Because that brings us into the first component really to talk about is the name itself. There are a few cards that will reference other cards by their name. So that the name is up top, the top left. There are, the next is these deck construction attributes. Now, I'll go in more detail of what each symbol is and how they're used, but ultimately what it does is it allows you to mix and match expansion cards, which I've got a couple sets here. These allow you to mix and match the construction of your deck before you start playing the game, so then the game feels different. And so this is part of that deck construction system. But I'll talk about that more during setup here shortly. The next piece of the card here are the values. Most cards have a value in the top left and bottom right. As you see, like Frenzied Flame does not have one. That's pretty rare. I think the only two cards in the core set that don't have one in the bottom right is Galdor's Grip and Frenzied Flame. That adds kind of a little bit an element of danger because you'll see later when we start talking about the game how not having a value in that card or the next card can kind of get you stuck in the deck and that loses you the game. But those values range from 1 to 6. And if you see any cards that have the wild card symbol in them, like Galdor's Grip, a couple of them on the rotated side have it, that's a wild card that can be any number between 1 and 6 for every interaction you have with the card. So if I interact with that card, it's the top card of my deck, I move it to the middle of the deck, it's the end of the game and I'm scoring, that's a new interaction with the card. I can make that a certain value to maybe help me complete a scoring objective. Or the first time I say it's a 6, I cycle through the deck, it's the top card of the deck, or it's another card that I could use, or another reason why I could use the value, I can make it a 4 this time and then a 1 next time. So every unique interaction with that card, you get to pick a value between 1 and 6 for those wild cards. So they're pretty valuable to have. And unlock here, as you'll see, these require certain conditions to be able to rotate this. Not only would you get points, score a point, you'd also have another wild card. So very valuable. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about on the cards is this rotation eligibility symbol. So if you see like that little swoop, it says that you can rotate the card freely. So what this means is if this is the top card of your deck only, anytime during that turn, you're able to rotate it. So if you wanted the 5 now to be the active side, you could do that, or you could have the 2. So your choice, as long as it's the top card of the deck, anytime during the turn. Any phases of the turn, you can choose to rotate it, okay? And there's also one card that has a special ability that targets those cards right here, Deep Root Depths, that allows you to rotate those even when they're not the top card of your deck. And we can go into more detail about what each ability is for each card later to talk about that. But what you'll notice is there's some cards that do not have that. For example, the Figments of Feragot do not. So I cannot freely rotate that to the side that earns me power. Generally, when you do not see that symbol, that means that you have to fulfill some condition, usually with its ability, or some scenario to allow this to be rotated. So like, for example, this ability, if this card was already face up, so the second time you encounter this card, then you would rotate it. And we're going to go more in detail specifically about Figments of Feragot because they're kind of unique with their different interactions. But I'll just highlight this card right here, Balgrant's Beard. It says, if the sum of all cards moving to the bottom of the deck is 13 or higher, rotate this card. So I can't freely move this to the wild card side that rewards power. But if I can fulfill this condition when some cards are moving to the bottom, if there's sum is 13 or higher, then I'd be able to rotate this. So that's that distinction of cards with that swoop rotate eligibility symbol, and they have a preview of what's on the other side as well, by the way. So that shows that, oh, there's a 5. If I rotate this, this would become the active value, etc. If you see those cards, you can freely rotate those anytime when they're top card of your deck. And we'll go over that again when we start talking about the turns. And then the last major component of every card are their abilities. And with those abilities, we'll talk about the trigger events. But so, you know, ability is going to be something that works toward scoring objectives, maybe alters the default rules of play, changes the game situation or status, etc. And so these they've got this white text here, and then right above here you'll see a little symbol, and then it will have a trigger event. This is when this ability will resolve or trigger or activate, or whatever word you want to use. So for example, this one says on top of the deck. So the only time that you'll be able to activate this ability is if this card is on top of the deck. The four triggered events are on top of deck. So that's whenever the abilities card obviously is on top, the top card of the deck. Moving to the bottom of the deck. This is whenever the ability is moving to the whenever that card is moving to the bottom of the deck, which is during one of the phases of a turn. One or more cards will move to the bottom of the deck, and that's how you cycle through the deck multiple times. So there's some cards, and that's kind of has this, if you can see it, this kind of down arrow moving down to the bottom of the deck symbol. Now, something to note, the card does not need to be the top card of the deck for that to work. So there's going to be a time when you've got a stack of cards moving to the bottom of the deck. As long as that's one of the cards moving, that ability is that event has been triggered, and now that you can activate that ability. The next one, it's pretty rare. It's in one card right now in the core set, and it's, I think, in one other card in one of the 2 expansions I have out, and that's anywhere in the deck. So whereas the other one had to be when it was moving, the other one was on top, this can trigger no matter where it's at in the deck. And the reason for this is this ability in particular, so it looks like kind of a little lightning symbol. It says anywhere in the deck. When all 4 binding stones are face up in the deck, rotate this card. Now, why this card is special is this is the card that you need to encounter rotated to end the game. This is the way that you end the game and to work toward a win. There's a couple other ways to win the game as a loss. You do not want those, but these ones, you're going to need to interact with this card, and it's going to need to be the top card of your deck. But in order to rotate it and get it so then this ability is active, all 4 of these need to be face up. Well, when you encounter the 4th, whichever binding stone that is, it's going to be the top card of your deck. Well, I want this to be rotated immediately. This is like triggering or setting Galdor's trap, right, to imprison Feragot. So this trap will be triggered the second whatever the 4th binding stone here becomes. It would be, you would reveal it and it would become face up. That would be the 4th one. So obviously this is going to trigger no matter where it's at in your deck. Okay, so that's pretty rare, that trigger event. There's only 2 in the entire game right now between the core set and the 2 expansions. I'll obviously probably have more down the road. But yeah, that's the only card that has that, pretty unique. And what's also unique about this card is many of the cards have the same ability on both sides. But this card has a different ability and a different trigger event on each side. Whereas this one, anytime in the deck and has that. This one is on top of the deck, and we'll go in more detail when I go through all the abilities of what that is. And then the last one is end of game. Let me find one of those. Let's actually look at one of the binding stones. Looks kind of like a little flag here. So yeah, that's precisely what it is at the end of the game. Now, this is at the end of the game when you've triggered the end of the game with Galdor's grip card, not when you lose the game. When you lose the game, you lose. It doesn't matter what happens at the end of the game, or this is normally a scoring objective. That does not matter. You've already lost the game. So that's really only when you've triggered the end of the game using Galdor's grip. So any of those flag symbols. So those are the 4 trigger events. Really, you're going to see 3. The anywhere in the deck is pretty rare. And then, I'm sorry, there is one more component of the cards, and those are is the power. This is important. It's represented by this little star symbol right here. Now, some cards have the power directly on them, which means as soon as you have that active, that you've earned and gained that power. And other cards, like, let's go back to the binding stone we looked at, some of them the power isn't given to you automatically if you're on that active side. You've got to fulfill this scoring objective, which in this case is if this card has the same value at the end of the game, by the way, if this card has the same value as an adjacent card, gain 1 power. So if there was a 3 on this side or this side at the end of the game, you would gain this power. So those are the two ways that you're going to see the power, but that's the power symbol. Some of them are directly on there. Some have to be earned through a certain scoring objective. Okay, and that's it for the card anatomy. Now let's talk about setup. So setup is actually, I'm going to actually talk about pre-setup because setup is very simple in this game. And when I'm talking about pre-setup, I'm kind of talking about deck construction. And now we're going to get back to those deck attributes we have here. There are 5 deck attributes. And basically what these do is these allow you to mix and match any essential core set card, any non-essential core set card with cards from expansions. And so what do I mean by non-essential cards? Well, let's talk about the very first symbol, the very first deck attribute, the most important one. And that's this little puzzle piece symbol here. It's kind of tough to see here in this video. I don't know if it's in focus or not, but this little puzzle piece, these 12 cards you see here, basically the ones that have the color on them, are essential cards. And what that means is a card with the puzzle piece icon or essential cards will be in every single deck of Galdor's Grip. Any card that does not have those is considered non-essential. These are the cards that you're going to mix and match with expansion cards. All right, so the main storyline of having to imprison Feragot will remain, but then the other manifestations that you encounter within Galdor's mind can change, which can make the game harder, easier. Obviously, there will be different scoring objectives, etc. Now, the second symbol or deck construction attribute is the skull symbol. So if you ever see a skull symbol on there, those are cards that can immediately lose you the game. There's some condition or ability that they have that can lose you the game outright. And so Faragot's Fortress has that, and the 5 Figments of Feragot all have that. So these 6 cards in the core set are the only ones with that. I actually don't think I have any other skull cards in the first 2 expansions yet, but I do have one planned maybe for the third one. It's kind of interesting. All right, the third attribute is this. It's kind of tough to see. Actually, no, we'll do this. The third one is this little fist symbol. That's the grip or Galdor's Grip. That's associated with Galdor and part of the cards that you need to win the game. So these are the only 5 cards who have that right now. And they're on all the yellow cards here. So those help get you to that game's win. Now, they end the game and set you up for a win, but there is one more thing that you need to do to win the game that I'll talk about, or that I've already mentioned, where you need 9 power, but I'll go into a little more detail about that here in pre-setup. Okay, the fourth attribute is one, let's look at this, is this little book with like kind of a pencil in the middle. These are cards that alter the default rules, where I'd mentioned that, for example, this card in particular, it has an ability that says you may rotate any other eligible cards that have the rotation symbol moving to the bottom of the deck. So normally, I can freely rotate it when it's the top card of the deck, but with this, if Deep Root Depths was the top card of the deck, I could technically rotate this as I was moving because of this ability. So it alters the default rules that normally say you can only freely rotate this when it's top card of the deck. So there's a couple of cards like that: Deep Root Depths, Maleficent Maze, and Frenzied Flame. Frenzied Flame kind of has a crazy ability, which we'll talk about there. It's very unique. I'm going to go over all the cards right before the playthrough, and then we'll do an abbreviated playthrough where I show a couple cycles of the deck, and then I'll end the deck. I'll kind of cheat a little bit, and then we'll end it there. Okay, and then the last deck attribute is the power or icon represented here by a star. This is a really easy, quick reference to see what is the maximum amount of power that I could gain in this in the game. I need a power threshold of 9 to win the game. And so if I added these all up in the core set, all the stars, because there's some cards, they're pretty rare, but some that can offer up to 2 power. And so you'll see 2 stars here. So it's really good to like quickly reference and see like, what is the maximum amount of power I could gain theoretically in this deck? And for the core set, that's 15. So you need 9. The essential cards, let's say you got rid of all these and traded them all in. These all, the core set cards have 15 maximum power. The essential cards have 10. So even if all of these were like books and offered no, you still could win the game with just the essential core set cards. Because eventually there's probably get a point where there's maybe all the cards just have the alter rules text on there and there were no scoring cards. That's going to make it tougher because now you only have 10 power and you need 9. But normally altering the rules make the deck manipulation, some of the rules easier. So maybe it would be easier. It's kind of a give or take. So just keep that in mind. And that kind of rolls us into the next piece I want to talk about, which was game difficulty. So as I've already said, now I'm looking at the rules, the maximum power you can gain with the core set is 15. Now this maximum will change as you mix and match expansion cards, but the deck will always maintain a minimum of 10 power, just like I mentioned. But to give you an example, like Beast Sanctum offers 2 power. Well, if I swapped out Hero's Rise, which is one of the new cards in the second expansion, now I would go down to 14 power. But maybe I like this card more and it's actually easier to pull off than Beast Sanctum in my mind. So now I have less power, but maybe that's an easier scoring objective or one I like more. So yes, the maximum power will fluctuate depending on what cards you mix and match with the what non-essential cards you mix and match. Now, while the default threshold required to win the game is 9, if you want to challenge yourself and say, hey, you know what, I want it to be higher, just make sure that your maximum can accommodate that. Or if you want to say, hey, I want to make it lower. Like easy mode, I say like 6. So even though Galdor's Grip mentions 9, it's up to you whether you want to play 9, 6, 12, all 15. In fact, I do have something called an all-star challenge, which is try, once you're ready and you've played the game and you're kind of comfortable, try and gain every star available in the deck. So for the core set, that would mean you would gain all 15 power or all 15 stars and to kind of complete that all-star challenge. And maybe I'll bake that in where if you do that, maybe it's a campaign where you unlock new cards or they start in a certain orientation or something down the road. I'm not sure, but that is kind of a fun challenge to go for, is to gain all available stars in a game. All right, so that's kind of it for pre-setup. I'm going to, actually, you know what? I'm going to change out one card. I want to highlight, what's a card I want to bring in? Let's do Hero's Rise. No, now we'll stay with the core set. All right, so I'm going to talk about setup, but right before, so I've done pre-setup where I talked about the deck construction, but you don't have to do any of that right out the box. If you're going to play with the core set, all you're going to do for setup is you're going to make sure all the cards are in their upright orientation like they are here. You're going to bring them together, and then you're going to shuffle them face down and just hold them in your hand. You're just going to have a deck of 18 cards. That's it for setup. So I just went on and on about, pre-setup deck construction. You don't have to do any of that if you're just going to play the core set or if you're going to repeat a game. But one thing I did forget to mention about if you do want to mix and match the cards, there are multiple ways you can do that. If like these are the non-essential cards, I could get rid of all 6 and just put in every expansion comes in 6. Just swap in the core set 6 non-essential cards for the new set. My personal favorite is I mix all my expansion cards together. I mix all the expansion cards together, and then I just draw 6 randomly, and then I put the other 6, and I don't even know what 6 I got. And that's really exciting because you're going to play differently when you don't know that certain cards are there than if you did know they were there. So that's another way. Or you can do kind of a hybrid where you randomize half and you put in like your favorites of the new cards and you keep in your core set favorites. any way you want to. I just want to say, like, it doesn't really matter how you set it up, but there are multiple ways that you could do that, both random or manually swap. Okay, so let's cover all of the cards individually and what they do before, because I'm going to do an abbreviated version of this playthrough, but I want you to see every card because I might not reveal every card in that abbreviated playthrough. So at least you'll know what they are. All right, so let's start with the binding stones themselves first, and then we'll talk about this, and we'll just go left to right. So starting here, there are 4 binding stones, and the premise here is you've got to activate these binding stones. You just have to turn them face up in order to basically set Galdor's trap and rotate the card. So naturally, by cycling through the deck and encountering the cards, you're going to flip these face up. And once you do, then you're going to rotate this card. So when all 4 binding stones are face up in the deck, rotate this card. And then this says, so basically, you're going to rotate this card wherever it's at, and the very next time, it's the top card of your deck. So you got to be careful of that, because if you don't want to end the game too early and you have not gained 9 power yet, you can lose the game. It's going to say, so its ability says specifically, if this card was already rotated, which it would have been in the turn, and the reason why this is worded this way, this comes up a bunch. Let's say that this card, you had already revealed all 4 of these, okay? You flip over this card. Let's say this is one of the last face down cards in your deck, right? You flip it over here. When all 4 binding stones are face up in the deck, rotate this card. Well, shoot, they already were all face up. I turned face up afterward. I immediately rotate it. Well, this is also the top card of the deck. If this card was already rotated, it was not already rotated. I just rotated it this turn. Then you would end the game. So I have to cycle back through the deck one more time. It was already rotated now that it's the top card of my deck. Again, it was rotated on a previous turn, so now I do trigger the end of the game. So that's kind of that delineation. Just keep that in mind. That's why I have that wording. You're going to see, like, if it was already face up, if it was already rotated. Well, if you do that on that turn, it wasn't already in that condition on that turn, so it doesn't trigger its ability. So just keep that in mind for several of the ones we're going to talk about. But if this card was already rotated in the game, you need at least 9 power to win, or else you lose. So keep that in mind. Once this is rotated, you want to avoid it until you're sure that you've gained at least 9 power. Now, the binding stones themselves function exactly the same, other than they have different values on the, this is a 1 and 6, 2 and 5, 3 and 4, 4 and 3, and they all have the same exact ability that says, if this card has the same value as an adjacent card, gain 1 power. Okay, it's exactly the same there, but obviously the value changes. Same ability, but a different value depending on its orientation. So all 4 of them have that same end of game scoring objective. So that's why that's right there. You can gain 4 power on those if you've got the same value adjacent to each one of these. The next card we'll talk about is Frenzied Flame. This is a very unique and different card. So it has, as you'll notice, it's got a wild card on one side and it doesn't have a value on the other side, okay? But it does give you 1 power, which is important for the end of the game. So this helps you during the game, a wild card, and this helps you at the end of the game. And it says, when it's on top card of the deck, you must rotate this card and then move it to a random spot in the deck. So the very first time, this is face down, you flip it over, you immediately have to rotate it and put it somewhere randomly in the middle of your deck. So this is that chaotic evil that's going to mess up your plans and your scoring objectives. So be careful about this. Now, the second time you encounter it, same thing, you must rotate this card and then move it to, so again, you're going to rotate it, you're going to lose that 1 power toward your, end game win condition, but you get the wild card, which will be helpful. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, as soon as I encounter this card every time, I don't get to use that. Why is that helpful? Well, at the end of the game, you might not get the power, but that wild card might help you toward a scoring objective. You'll see as we start talking about the turns, why that might be valuable if it's the next card in your deck like this, etc. So there are some uses for that wild card during the game or even at the end of the game. And then also it says end this turn. The reason for this is there are 2 phases as I talk about how turns work right after I talk about all the abilities. But This basically skips the second phase of a turn, and so there's some confusion because normally you interact with the top card and then you move some to the bottom of the deck. Well, this moves to the middle of the deck just by itself. So what happens there? Well, you immediately end the turn and then you would start the next turn, which you would interact with the next top card of the deck, like it's a brand new turn, okay? So we'll talk about that more when we get to the playthrough and I go over the turns. But yeah, very unique card. That's your chaotic evil that can kind of mess up your plans. All right. We've got the 5 Figments of Feragot. They're all just like the Binding Stones. They all have the same exact ability, but they have different values. But we'll look at this one in particular. So Figment of Feragot is a very good example of where you want to encounter a card a certain number of times, but not too many times. And it's very good example of how like there's different abilities on both sides. And so how this card works, let's say it's the top card of my deck, it's face down. I'm going to flip it face up. I'm going to encounter the card and it's got an on top of the deck ability. It says if this card was already face up, rotate it. Now, I'm thinking about it now, talking about it out loud after all these months. It probably makes more sense if I said that if this card was already face up this turn, maybe I'll add that in the next version. If it was already face up this turn, rotate it. Well, it wasn't already face up this turn because it was face down. I had to flip it face up. So it does not trigger on the very first encounter. Okay, let's say I cycle all the way through the deck again. It's again the top card of my deck. If this card was already face up, rotate it. Oh, it was. Okay, I'm going to rotate it. Great, I just earned 1 power. Remember, I need 9 power to win the game. Great, but it's got a new ability. If this card was already rotated, lose the game. Well, this turn I just rotated that card. So I didn't lose the game. So that's my second encounter with this card. Now I'm going to want to encounter all of these at least 2 times if I want to gain power from them. Now there's 15 power, so I don't have to rotate all of them to gain that power, but they're pretty easy to encounter at least twice. The danger though is with this new rotated ability, if I encounter this a third time, if this card was already rotated, which it was from my second encounter, you lose the game. So you've got to be very careful. These are interesting because you want to encounter them twice to gain that power, but you don't want to encounter them ever again after that. So you got to be very careful. That can lose you the game if you don't plan out accordingly. Now, Feragot's Fortress itself, it has also an on top of the card ability, but it lets you cheat a little bit for a while. You may peek at a face down card in the deck, but if there are none, lose the game. So for majority of the deck, it's actually nice to land on Feragot's Fortress. But if you get near the end of the game and you've revealed all the cards, you never want to encounter this card again. And it has the same ability on both sides in this case. So really helpful, or can be kind of helpful throughout the game, and then becomes a real nuisance at the near the end game when all the cards are face up. So be very careful about that one. Okay, let's talk about the non-essential cards. So I kind of group these into 3 categories here. There are 2 cards that kind of alter the rules, 2 cards that you can score during the game, like while they're moving to the bottom of the deck, and then 2 cards that you can score if you've set up the deck in a certain way that score at the end of the game. So let's talk about the 2 cards that we'll just kind of bring them up together. Okay. So I kind of already talked about Deep Root Depths that says you may rotate any other eligible cards moving to the bottom of the deck. And what that normally means is, let's say that I was moving 5 cards to the bottom of the deck. Well, only this card can I freely rotate. It itself is a card that I can freely rotate. But any of the other cards, for example, like Maleficent Maze, I would not be able to rotate. But if this is the top card of the deck, or if it's moving with these cards, this doesn't even need to be the top card of the deck. It's moving to the bottom of the deck. So let's do this. So if Deep Root Depths was here, I could technically rotate both or one of these cards. Because even they're not the top card, but I've got Deep Root Depths ability. And so now I could also rotate this if I wanted, because it's the top card of the deck where I don't have to. So that alters the rules. Now what Maleficent Maze, I haven't really talked about turns yet, so this is a little awkward to talk about now without a lot of context. But it says you may rearrange the order of all cards moving to the bottom of the deck. Well, what you're going to find when I talk about the turn here after I talk about all the abilities is normally when cards are moving to the bottom of the deck, they have to maintain their same orientation and order. The exception is obviously you can rotate an eligible card here, but also the top card, you can move anywhere within the stack of cards moving to the bottom of the deck. That's the only one that can move. So I can keep it here, I can move it here, I can move it here, okay? What Maleficent Maze allows you to do is I can rearrange these however I want. So they can, you know, I could make them whatever order I want. I want those two first, actually, you know, here. And like I can rotate them however I want. So this card circumvents and changes that default where I can only change the order of the top card. Now I can change the order of all of them with if Maleficent Maze is moving to the bottom of the deck. So if it's just one of the cards in the stack moving, I can activate those two abilities. So those are kind of interesting cards. Those will help you kind of finish some of those tougher scoring objectives. All right, the next two cards we'll talk about. These both can score, potentially score you 1 power and have a wild card on the rotated side. Let's look at Balgrunn's Beard first. I think I already mentioned this once when I was talking about like abilities, but this says, if the sum of all cards moving to the bottom of the deck is 13 or higher, rotate this card. So let's say that 5 cards were moving to the bottom of the deck. If you added up their active values and it added up to 14, okay, now I can rotate this card. And now I'll have a wild card there, and I'll have the star here. Perfect. Do I mention that somewhere? Yeah, I'll mention that later with the turns. Well, or I can mention it now. So something to note here, this is kind of interesting. If multiple cards, it's pretty rare that it will matter, but if multiple cards have the same event trigger, for example, both of these are moving to the bottom of the deck, I get to pick the order and they resolve. And that might matter because let's say that I'm moving 5 cards. Well, let's talk about this and then I'll bring up that example again. It says, if the sum of adjacent cards moving to the bottom of the deck is 7, rotate this card. So the flavor behind this one is you got to climb the mountain, right? Get a peak of 13. The stronger the cards you have, the more cards you have, the more likely you're going to be able to climb the mountain. This is more kind of like the code, the password. You need the exact password to get into the Vault of Avarice. But this is a good example. Imagine that I had a 5 on this side and I have a 3 on this side, and these cards were moving to the bottom of the deck. Well, 3 and 5 equals 8, okay? But these both trigger at the same time. So if I had a 5, let me see if is that a good example? No, that's a bad example. Let's say I had a 6 here, okay? Well, 6 plus 4 plus 3 is 13. So 6 and 3 do not add up to 7. So I'm moving them to the bottom. I don't trigger this, but wait a minute. Those 3 cards, that's 6, 4, 3, while I'm moving them to the bottom of the deck, that does equal 13 or higher. So I can rotate that. Well, guess what? As I'm moving it, I immediately want that to be a 1 with that 6. And that's a pretty rare circumstance that that's going to happen. But really what I wanted to highlight here is with any expansion cards, with the core set cards like this, if there's ever a time where 2 cards trigger during the same exact event, you get to pick the order and they resolve, because there might be a time where maybe there's a card that has a negative effect. And by you resolving one card first, it will make the other one like nullified or fizzle or not work or be minimized or ignored. So that's up to you, right? You've got your own telepathic powers, so you can kind of manipulate Galdor's mind or manifestations within his mind a little bit. So that's just something to bring up. All right, so I went very in depth of all the abilities of the core set. I won't go over the 2 expansion cards. Maybe in another video I'll go over that, but yeah, so that's it. So let's really quickly talk about the turns, how the game ends, and then let's jump into the abbreviated video because this has already been probably my longest video here. Okay, so let's talk about now the turns. So setup, actually let's start setup here. So setup, these are all, let me make sure I left these all face up since I was talking about them. Okay, they look good. All right, so I'm gonna do setup here. All right, so the game is played over a series of turns, and each turn consists of 2 phases, the encounter phase and the explore phase. The encounter phase interacts with the top card of the deck, and the explore phase moves a certain number of cards to the bottom of the deck. During each phase, you're gonna, resolve all corresponding effects and abilities and events and make decisions based on the options available. During play, you may check the composition and order of the deck at any time and inspect any face-up cards. Okay, so as I'm going through here, you know, let's say like, you know, I moved Frenzied Flame to the middle of the deck, I can immediately look and see what impact that had. Or, oh, you know, oh, how many Binding Stones do I have? Or, oh, if I move this here the next time, right? So you're allowed to do that anytime. Now, what you can't do is peek at face-down cards unless you use Faragot's Fortress, which allows you to peek at one face-down card. Okay. Obviously, as I mentioned before, you may rotate the cards that have that eligibility, the little rotate symbol, anytime during any phase of a turn, as long as it's the top card of the deck. Or if Deep Root Depths allows you to do that while moving to the bottom of the deck. All right, I'd already mentioned about multiple abilities at triggering. So let's talk about the encounter phase. So you're going to start each turn by encountering the top card of the deck. And if it's face down, you're going to flip it face up. Okay? Abilities that have that on top of deck symbol, which this doesn't, this is an end of game symbol, you're going to resolve at this time. Now, if they have an ability text that says end this turn, you're going to skip the next phase and go right into the next turn, which would mean normally when it says end this turn, that means it got rid of itself. And so the next turn would be encountering, again, the top card of the next top card of the deck. But this is an end of game ability, so we don't have to worry about that. I've already talked about encountering Figments of Feragot, so I won't go into detail about that again. So now let's just jump. So that's it for encounter. Interact with the top card of the deck, flip it face up if it's face down, resolve its ability if it says on top of the deck. All right, explore is the second phase. So you're going to end each turn by moving cards to the bottom of the deck to explore more of it. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose a value based on up to 2 options. In the beginning part of the game, it's really only going to be one option I'll describe it better here, but really you're only going to have one option. So here are the 2 options. You're going to either pick this active value or the next card's active value. So if this was a 6 and this was a 3, I could pick 6 or 3 because that's how many cards I'm going to move to the bottom of the deck. I could also, and this is why I was kind of getting held up here, is you have 2 options, right? You have active top card active value or next card active value, but you kind of have like 2.5 or 2 with a caveat because really I have 3 options if this has an active value, this does, and I can rotate this. So technically, if this was a 3, I could have 1, 6, or 3. So it's always the top card's active value or next card active value. So I could change this to a 1. Okay, I could rotate this to a 1, but this says, oh yeah, I didn't go over the last 2 card abilities. Well, that's good that this came up then. So I apologize for that. For this one, it activates at the end of the game. If the deck contains exactly 3 6s, so 666, they don't have to be adjacent, just anywhere in the deck, and it can't be as wild cards. So you can use a wild card as a 6 toward another scoring objective, but it won't count for this one. You will gain 2 power. So this is the only card that can gain 2 power because it's pretty tough to pull off. There are only 3 6s in the deck, and you've got to make sure that they are rotated and oriented to those 6s. So this is kind of tough to pull off. It's early in the game, so I'm actually going to rotate this to the one side. So once you've picked your value, which in the early part of the game, since most of these are face down, I'm really only going to have the top card option, not the next card option. But once these all start, more and more are revealed face up, I'll have that next card. And you'll see that because we're going to go through the deck a couple times. But once you've picked your value, then you're going to count exactly that many cards from the top of the deck, including the top card of itself, and you're going to move them to the bottom of the deck, maintaining their current orientation and order with one exception. The top card of the deck, you can change the order, kind of like I had already talked about. So if, let's say I chose 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, these are kind of stuck together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't make sense right now because I have no idea what these cards are. I could put this here. I could put it at the end. I could put it anywhere. But I can't change the order of these cards, okay? So that's the only caveat. You got to keep same orientation. in order once they start moving. But I'm actually going to make this a 1 and just move itself. Okay. Obviously, any cards that have the event trigger of moving to the bottom of the deck do not need to be the top card of the deck. They just need to be in that stack of cards moving. Will trigger, and you can resolve them during this phase. All right. That's pretty much it for turns. Very, very simple. Most of the interaction gameplay is going to be based on those abilities and the scoring objectives you're working toward, or those abilities you're trying to avoid so they don't lose you the game. Now let's talk about the end of the game. So how the game ends. There are 3 ways to lose in this game. If you don't have any available move options. So what that means is, did I already start this? Oh, I did. Okay, so I'm going to encounter. None of the cards start where this side is blank, but I mentioned Galdor's Grip and Frenzied Flame. The rotated side has no value here. Let's say that I had the rotated side of those cards, and the next card was either face down or also one of those cards and had no active value showing. Well, no active value showing, I'm stuck in Galdor's Mine, I lose the game. Very rare in the core set. You literally have to have Galdor's Grip, Frenzied Flame, face up, and a lot of cards face down, or those 2 next to each other. So it's pretty rare, but it can happen. So if you ever get stuck and you have no way to move, you can lose the game. The second way you can lose the game is if you encounter the same Figment of Feragot on top of the deck for a 3rd time, which triggers its rotated ability, which we'd already talked about. In fact, let's try and find that again just as a reminder. I'm going to rotate this to a 2. I'm going to move 2 cards. See if we can get a Figment of Feragot. Sorry, these cards are kind of new, so I can't tell. Okay, if they're like stuck together or not. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So right here, if this card was already face up, rotated, it was not already face up. So I can't. That's active ability, but it doesn't. I don't fulfill its condition, so I'm good. But if I were here, if this card was already rotated, lose the game. Okay, so that's if I cycled through and this was my 3rd encounter, it would have already been rotated. I would lose the game. So that's the second way you can lose the game. Okay, I'll keep that for now. The 3rd way you can lose the game is if you encounter that Galdor's Grip card. It's rotated and it says end the game. Remember, it says you need at least 9 power to win the game. Well, if you don't have 9 power, you will lose the game. So that's the 3rd way you can lose the game. You end it without enough power. So on the flip side then, the one way you can win this game is if you end the game with that Galdor's Grip card and you do have at least 9 power. Okay? And that's how you play. Those are the rules for Galdor's Grip. So now I'm going to continue this playthrough, pretty abbreviated because this video is already a lot longer than I had planned on. But let's go through a couple cycles of the deck. I'll probably just end the game and just show you scoring and how the game the flow works. Okay, so let's continue the game. All right, so I have a 5. I have no other active value options. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is just thematically, we're kind of exploring Galdor's mind. We've never been in his mind, so a lot of it is unknown as we're exploring in it. Okay, I want to explore as much of the deck, so I'm just kind of picking all the low values right now. So 1, 2, 3. Ooh, Frenzied Flame. You must rotate this card and then move it to a random spot in the deck. Okay, and then end this turn. So I'm gonna put it in a random spot. Oh boy, pretty early, but so this is what's dangerous is if this is the top card of my deck and I ever get to this, I'm stuck. I can't move anywhere. So I gotta be real. Oh, actually, you know what? No, that wouldn't happen because as soon as I encounter the top card of the deck, I end the turn and it moves. So this, actually, the only scenario would be Galdor's Grip. This doesn't even allow you to do that. So actually, you're okay with Frenzied Flame. Yeah, because this immediately I would show and then I could interact. So that says end your turn. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud and explaining out loud. I'm kind of moving quick, but yeah, so there's no way to lose the game with this because you'll immediately get rid of this and then you can interact with the next card. So remember this said end the turn. So this is what I was talking about where I did the encounter phase, but there's no explore phase because I'm not picking any options. So I ended the turn and basically skipped the explore phase for that turn. So now it's now the third or the next turn. So I'm going to encounter the top card. Okay, we got another Figment of Feragot. 1, 2. Move 2 to the bottom. Encounter the next one. And now we're starting to cycle through the deck where, as you see here, I now have 2 options. Kind of 2.5 or 3 really, but 2. I have this active value and this active value. But remember, I can always, since this has eligibility, which is not always the case, I could rotate this. So really I have an option of 1, 4, or 3. So let's see, what do I want to do? I'm going to, I think, pick the 3. So 1, 2, 3, so I can encounter this new card. And I do have, you may rearrange the order of all cards. So normally where I'd only be able, if I wanted to, I could change that or here. I could change this to where this is here and this is over. Well, I guess it doesn't really work with 3 cards, but yeah, so that does trigger, but it's so early in the game. I'm not going to worry about it. But where this would be nice toward the end of the game, there's one, of course, it's the one card I forgot to mention, but I'm going to move this here. So that makes a 1, 2, 3. Veiled Stare was the one card I didn't show off here. I totally forgot these last 2 cards. Thankfully, we got this one. What it says is if there is a, if there are 3 adjacent cards in the deck, or the deck contains 3 adjacent cards that are in sequential ascending or descending order, you will gain 1 power. So like 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1, it doesn't matter. As long as they're adjacent and they're sequential, you will gain that 1 power at the end of the game. So technically I fulfill that, so maybe I'll do that for this case. Really early in the game, but we're going to do an abbreviated version of the playthrough. Okay, so I said move 3 cards. I reordered those. Ooh, Vault of Avarice. Shoot. All right, so I only have, well, what's on the other side? Ooh. So if I would have moved those together, I would have had that now. Okay. So I'm going to pick the 3, 1, 2, 3, so then I can reveal this card. So I'm going to keep that order for now. I think I'll be able to activate that next time we encounter it. Okay, another Figment of Feragot. So here we go. So I could pick the 5 or the 1. As you see, this is where I really only, I have 2 options. I don't have that like 2.5, if you will, because I can't rotate this, right? It doesn't have that eligibility. So really I have this active value or this active value, and this one, I don't have 2 options for my top card active value. So really I have only the 2 options this time. So I could pick, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or I could pick 1, which let's do that for the sake of the game. I'm going to pick 1, move itself. And now if this card was already face up, which it was, boom, I've earned and gained my first power. So I'm 1 out of 9 toward my requirement for the win condition. Jackpot. But if I ever encounter this again, I lose the game. So that's a little scary this early in the game. Okay, and I now have to choose that 5. Whoops, maybe this wasn't a smart idea. Well, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and I'm going to change the order. Sometimes if you feel like you're kind of encountering the same cards and you cycle through the deck, make sure that you're changing the order of your cards. That's going to make a difference. So you're not cycling. That obviously is going to have an immediate impact the next time you come through and cycle the cards. If you played exactly the same, but you start changing the order a little bit, you're going to encounter new cards that you haven't encountered before, for sure. So let's just do that. Change it up a little bit, okay? Ooh, Farragot's Fortress. You may peek at a face-down card in the deck. If there are none, lose the game. There's plenty still face down, so we're good. So if I did 1, 2, 3, I'm already going to see that. So let's just see what this one is. Okay, and I did that bad. I should do this. Okay, so there's one of our Binding Stones. Okay, so I'm going to do... Well, shoot, did I do that wrong? I did that wrong. That was stupid. I should have looked at this face-down card because I'm about to skip that one. Well, that was silly. Okay, well, so I'm going to use the 3 from the next card's active value, not the 1. And you know what? I can still rotate this. I want to work toward that B Sanctum. If you recall, B Sanctum says if all 3 cards, if there's exactly 3 6s, this is one of the 6s. And in fact, I think this was the 6 too that we're about to reveal. If there's 3 6s, I'm going to gain 2 power. Well, I'm going to use this 3, but that doesn't mean I can't rotate this to the 6. I don't have to use the 1 here. So I'm going to rotate it, but then I'm going to take the 3. So 1, 2, 3. And I was stupid because I just peeked at the wrong card. And there's our Binding Stone. Now, so here's where kind of like some of those mini decisions come in is, well, I could take the 1. I could take the 1, and now I can rotate this card, and I've earned another power. Or I can rotate the 6, take the 2, or a 6, or I could move 6 cards, but I think I'm just going to do 2. And now I've got all 3. Well, shoot, I don't have that 6. Oh, boy. Yeah, let's work toward that. So I was thinking, do I take the 1 and activate that? See, if I'm going to use the 1, I can't. If I'm going to use the 1 here, it's got to be active. But if I want to use the 2, either the 1 or the 6 could be active. I want to use the 2, and I'm going to try and get that back to a 6. But that's kind of, or I could do the 1 and do that power right away. All right, let's just do the 2. Okay. We got 4 or 1. All right, I'm going to use the 1. So I just moved 1 card, basically that card. I use the next card's value here to move that itself. And now this is the top card of the deck. I'm going to rotate it to a 6. So now, if the game ended right now, I would be fulfilling, and I would have 2 power. And I already earned, I think, at least 1. So I'm like kind of like 3 out of 9 as of right now. Ooh, but that did mess up my 1, 2, 3 I was talking about for Veiled Stairs. So, ooh, but I have 2, 3, 4, so we're good. Okay. Ooh, here we go. Ooh, this is going to be a big combo. All right. So, wow, a lot's going to go on here. So I'm going to take the 6, and then I can not only reshuffle these because I have Maleficent if I wanted to, I can also, I have Deep Root Depths that says any card that's got that rotate symbol, doesn't have to be the top card of the deck, I can rotate it. So what I'm going to do as I'm moving these, do I want to change the order at all? I don't think I care about order right now, but I'm going to rotate. Ooh. Yeah, I think I like this. Oh, no, that's going to mess up my. Well, I guess this is going to become a wild card. Let's rotate this. You may rotate any other. Oh, shoot, I can't rotate any. I can't rotate Deep Root Depths. Oh, that's kind of not fun. All right. That 3 + 4 = 7. Boom. We just earned another power with Vault of Avarice. And it's a wild card. So maybe I should do that. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to also change this order. See how I can pick the order of how I resolve these? So now I've got a 2, 3, 4. So that actually helps my Veiled Stairs. So I got a lot going on here. We'll see how it all ends. But that was a really big move. A lot of stuff happened there. That's kind of cool. Cool combo. All right. Here I've only got the 1. Ooh, boom. Galdor's Grip. So now this can trigger anywhere in the deck. So when I first reveal this, I kind of look and see how many Binding Stones. I try and keep that in the back of the mind that, hey, I've got to rotate this card. A lot of people forget it. I know it's kind of a pain, but you'll get more used to it. So 1, there's 1 Binding Stone, 2. I just have 2 right now. 3. Ooh, so I already have 3. So the next Binding Stone that I reveal will be the 4th. I got to search this out and rotate it. And then the next time I encounter that card, the game's over. So, and another thing I kind of like thematically, you got a wild card here, right? Galdor's kind of helping you out. But as soon as you set that trap, it's going to alert those forces, and it's kind of dangerous. You lose that wild card. So it makes the game more dangerous because now you've kind of set a trap and it can't move. It's waiting to spring that prison, that illusory prison on Feragot and end the game. So it's really nice we have. Okay, I want to skip over this because I want to keep that. Now that I've got Galdor's Grip here for now, I don't care about that wild card. So let's say that this is a 3. Or I could say it's a 1. Oh, wait, what am I doing? I'm an idiot. If I said it was a 1, I'd lose the game. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I already earned the power. That's dumb. Okay, so we'll say it's a 3. Boom. All right, we got 2. Here's Veiled Stare. If the deck contains 3 or more adjacent cards in ascending or descending sequential order, gain 1 power, which I think we've already done. So that's kind of nice. All right, I could do 2, get there, or I could do 5. So 5 would get me there. I didn't look at that card. Let's see what that card is. So I'm going to do 2. I'm going to reorder these. So maybe I won't encounter that next time. And then, shoot. I could do 3, but that skips that. Or I could do a 1. Doesn't really do much for me. Oh, I get to peek at a card. Let's just peek and see what that is. Oh, that's my other Binding Stone. So I'm going to cheat, right? I've been playing this game already enough. I don't think I have enough power, but I want to see where I'm at, and let's just end the game. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to say that was a 2. Boom. That's our 4th Binding Stone face up. I'm going to find Galdor's Grip. Okay. So for sake of time, I think you guys have seen how you can play the game. Oh, geez, now I can't find Galdor's Grip. Sorry, these cards are kind of stuck together a little bit. There we go. Okay, there it is. I'm going to rotate it. So now let's just say I had cycled through and boom. This is now the top card of my deck. I encounter it, boom, on top of the deck. If this card was already rotated, end the game. You need at least 9 power to win or else you lose. So what I suggest at this time is to find all the active power you already have and then check your abilities to see if you gained any more power. And so do not change the order of your cards or shuffle them around at this time because order will matter for some of the cards, right? Adjacency matters, orientation matters, etc. So first thing I do, I go through and I just count like all the power I gain directly. So we have 1, 2. Okay, 3. I think it was just 3 directly. Yep, didn't get any more Figments of Feragot. All right, so I'm 3 out of 9. Okay. So now I'm going to go in order and look for end of game abilities, that little flag. Okay, so Veiled Stare. Okay, if the deck contains 3 or more adjacent cards in ascending or descending sequential order, gain. And I think we have that. So we're at 3 out of 9. Thought we had that. Yep, there we go. The 2, this interaction, I'm going to say that's a 3, so 2, 3, 4. So boom. So now we're at 4 out of 9. So let's go back. So we fulfilled the Veiled Stare's scoring objective. We're at 4 out of 9. Okay, this is our first Binding Stone. If this card has the same value as an adjacent card, gain 1 power. Nope. How about the next one? Ooh, this is brutal that all 3 are next to each other. Okay. Ooh, that's really bad. Okay, so I didn't gain any from the Binding Stone, these 3 Binding Stones. Let's look at the last one, just by the way. Ooh, another wild card. I'm now going to say this is a 4. So this is where I said it was a 3 for Veiled Stare. This is another interaction toward a scoring objective. I'm going to say it's a 3. So wild cards are pretty valuable. So, or I'm going to say it's a 4. It was a 3 before. So now I'm at 5 out of 9. Okay. Let me see if there's any other end of games. I glossed over. Okay, I'm at 5 out of 9, right? Okay, if the deck contains exactly 3 6s, not as wild card, gain 2 power. There's 1 6. I think I have all 3 6s. There's the other 6, and there's the third 6. Those are only 3 6s in the game. Core set, for sure. So I got 7 out of 9. So even though I ended the game very early, I got pretty close considering like I barely did any turns. I got 7 of the 9 I needed. And remember, there's 15 total power. So that wasn't bad for an abbreviated version. Thank you for sticking with me for this entire time. And I hope you enjoy playing Galdor's Grip as much as I do. All right, take care.